Hi, welcome to the OSHA fall protection video. We're going to be learning about fall protection in this lesson. You guys will be learning about the proper procedures to take to make sure that you're safe on a construction site, especially as it's concerned to falling. What I need you to do right now is make sure you have a pencil and some paper. I need you to have some lined paper to write down some questions, and then also some blank paper to do an activity later in the lesson where you will be creating a poster. So make sure you have those materials on hand and ready to go, and we'll get it started. So we're going to be learning about fall protection, and you can see in this picture that we got in front of us here that this worker is in a very unsafe position. He is bent over in that position there, where he could easily lose his balance and go right off the edge there. It's an unprotected edge, at least where he's standing. He does have some handrail, some guardrail. If you see right there behind him and below him, he's got some guardrail, but he's choosing to do his work on the danger side of that guardrail. So that's no good. And if you count the floors, these what they call stories in construction, he is about 5 stories if you count them all from the ground. So that's about 50 to 60 feet from the ground. And if he lost his balance, if someone bumped him on accident, he'd be going over. You'll also notice these rebar that are sticking up here. They are unprotected. There's no caps over those to protect the worker. So if he falls and lands on one of those bars, that's going to be bad. That's going to be the end of the game for him. So OSHA was created to prevent these types of situations from workers being exposed to dangers. So before OSHA, we know that work in America was dangerous. This is a photo of some workers that had built a bridge, and they're unbelievably high in the air, as you can see. There's incredible risk for them. They're holding on to those cables. Some of them are just casually relaxing, as you can see here, and this guy here. And if anything was to happen, I don't think there's a lot of earthquakes in New York, but if there was an earthquake, you'd have some of those people falling. If as they're climbing down this thing, they slip. There's nothing to catch them, and if they fall into the bay, that's it. They're over. Life is done for them. And if they fall and hit this bridge here, if they live, it's going to be, they're going to remember this for the rest of their lives. So OSHA was signed into law to prevent this very thing from being standard practice in the United States. So we're going to start with a video clip. This is a kind of a catchy little film about preventing falls in the workplace, not just on construction sites, but pretty much any workplace. So I'll be quiet here and let the video talk for itself.
Somebody help! Accident? There's no accident. The company should have replaced that ladder years ago. I knew I shouldn't have reached over like that. And why isn't there a strict policy about 2 people doing a job like this?
So yeah, it can happen just that quick, and it happens to people all across the United States. So companies have to be very aware of the fact that if they put their workers in a position where they could fall, they're taking themselves, their company will be responsible and liable in that situation. So first thing I want you to do to get this presentation going is copy these 10 questions. What I'd like you to do is just pause the video right now and copy all 10. Make sure you leave some space for some of these. All you need is maybe a line for each question, so you have an extra line to have some room to fill in the answers. And go ahead and get that done. And as soon as you're done with that, we'll continue with the presentation. All right, so falls are the leading cause of deaths in the construction industry. This is the number one cause of deaths. There are four focus areas in construction that we're going to focus on from the beginning, and falls is one of them. The other three are electric deaths, being caught in between, and being struck by. Those are the focus four areas that we're going to be looking at in this OSHA training. And the first one we start with is falls, because that's how most people die. All right. So most fatalities occur when employees fall from open-sided floors and through floor openings. So we're going to look at what that looks like. What does an open-sided floor look like in construction? You're going to be around them all the time because you're building the house. And if you're building a house or you're building a structure, you're going to be sometimes one floor up, two floors up. It could be three floors up. And so you have to be protected from the possibility of falling from those elevated positions. Falls from as little as 4 to 6 feet can cause serious lost time accidents and sometimes death. So it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to be really high to die from a fall. And I know it seems like, you feel like, hey, I jumped 6-foot fences, no problem. I can jump off of a wall and land on my feet. But when you're in construction and you're working, you're not paying attention to the fact that you're falling or that you're jumping. Instead, you're paying attention to the work that you're doing. And when you do that and you fall, those falls catch you off guard. And it's hard to correct yourself or to respond to that because you're falling. So that's why OSHA has set a standard that anytime you're above 6 feet or more, you have to be protected. And that's an answer to one of our questions, that if you go up above 6 feet in construction, you need to have some kind of fall protection. And a good, quick, easy reference point for you to easily see how high exactly is 6 feet. If you take a look at a door, they're 6 foot 8 inches. Most typical doors are 6 foot 8 inches high. So if you look at the very top of a door, you could just say to yourself, anytime I go above that height, I need to have fall protection. Anytime you're below it, any part of your body's below it, then you're safe. But if you're above that door height, then you need to be sure that you have some kind of protection so you don't fall and hurt yourself. So in this presentation, we're going to be looking at the working conditions that prompt the use of fall protection. So that's a fancy way of saying, when do you need it? Like, in what conditions, in what circumstances should you have fall protection? And then when you know you need fall protection, what are your options? Like, what could you do to make sure that you don't fall in construction? At the end of this topic, you'll be able to list 4 ways that you could protect yourself. So what are 4 acceptable ways by OSHA for protecting yourself from falling? And then I need you to be able to state the main criteria that prompts the use of fall protection. So I need you to be able to tell me, here's the rule in construction. If I'm above 6 feet, that's the criteria. If I'm above 6 feet, I need fall protection. There's only one exception to that rule, and we'll get into that later. So, but I also need you to be able to tell me the 4 methods. Those will be on the quiz for this presentation. So here's 3 of your options. You got a personal fall arrest system. That's this one over here all the way to the left. And it looks kind of like a bungee jumper would wear. If a bungee jumper was going on a jump, they would put on something very similar to this, full body harness. And there's components of the personal fall arrest system that we'll get into later. But that's one option for protecting yourself from falls. This is a second one in the middle here. This is a guardrail system, and it's very detailed, and we'll get into exactly what they should look like in a few slides. And then you got a safety net option, which almost looks like it belongs in a circus, or a trapeze artist would be using it. But these are used in construction, and we'll get into when those are necessary and requirements for those. And then there's one other option that we'll get into, and that is a safety monitor. And we'll get into that on a later slide, and I'll tell you exactly what a safety monitor is and what they do. But that is your 4th option for fall protection. So here's some workers using a personal fall arrest system, a full body harness. You'll see that they are laying some floor, a subfloor for a second floor of a house. And they're up probably about 10, 12 feet in the air. They're wearing their harnesses, and you see that there is a lanyard, or it's kind of like a lead rope, or a safety line, and it is attached to an anchor. This anchor rope right here is attached to the building, so that the workers can move along the rope to do their work. But if they actually fall through the floor joist over here, they fall off the side of the building, they wouldn't be able to hit the ground. And so the harness keeps them protected from falling. These lanyards are one-time use lanyards. So if a worker uses it because they accidentally step off the building or something like that, then they'd have to take off this lanyard, throw it away, and ask their boss for a new one. And the boss will give them a new one, and then they can keep right on trucking. So you can see what a personal fall arrest system looks like, and how it should operate on the job. Okay, and this is a harness that's been put on properly, been adjusted and put on a worker. You can see that the harness goes around both legs. It has a waist belt, and then you've got two straps that go over your shoulders with a D-ring in the middle. And this D-ring, you really want to be between the shoulder blades on your back. If you don't adjust it properly and this D-ring is high on your neck, it'll put undue pressure on your body when you fall. And likewise, if it's too low, you won't hang properly, and you'll be very uncomfortable until someone rescues you. So having the D-ring in the correct spot on your back is very important. And then making sure that the harness is adjusted properly and fitted to you is important. That's all a part of the training you'll get from your employer. And the personal fall arrest systems, there's three big components of the fall arrest system. You've got the anchorage, which is the part that you attach your system to. That's got to be bolted, or it's got to be an independent structure that will support you, and it'll support the weight of what you're doing. And that the requirement says 5,000 pounds per worker. So if 5,000 pounds pressure was put on that anchorage point, it wouldn't give way. That's the requirement. So a personal fall arrest system is composed of an anchorage, it's composed of a lifeline or a lanyard, and then it is composed of a body harness like this fella has on right here. So, and this is kind of restating what I just said, that if you're going to attach to something like this independent anchorage that they have right here, that it has to be capable of maintaining 5,000 pounds per worker. So the reason for that is if a crane or something was to fall on the anchorage line, they don't want the anchorage line to fall and take you with it. So, or they don't want material to fall on it, or they don't want something inadvertently to happen to cause that anchorage to fail while you're attached to it. And so the 5,000 pound per worker requirement seems like a lot, but it really is a pretty reasonable number when you think about how heavy equipment is and how heavy materials are in the construction industry. So it's not bad. I mean, and if you have two workers attached to that, it would have to be 10,000 pound, rated for 10,000 pounds. And it's very common that contractors realize that they're going to have more than one person attached to it. So when they set up these anchorages, they set them up for 25, 30,000 pounds so that they can have as many as 6 workers working on one line at a time. So it's not something that they're unfamiliar with. They wouldn't even bat an eye at it. They understand this regulation. Just make sure that you are protected that way, that you have an independent anchorage point, and that you're connected to it, and that it's sound. Another way of protecting yourself on a construction site are guardrails, and you're looking at one right here in this picture. Guardrails are specifically designed and engineered to withstand the weight of a construction worker. They have to be able to withstand the weight of that. If a construction worker were to fall into it, it wouldn't let the construction worker fall over it. That's the deal. It has to have these three rails. You've got a top rail, a mid rail, and then you have a toe board. And the top rail has to be between 39 and 45 inches tall. It can't be taller than 45 inches. That's the highest it can go. The mid rail is somewhere in between the toe board and the top rail, should be measured and then placed in the middle. And then you have a toe board on the bottom. It has to be 3.5 inches tall. And you might be asking yourself, why put a toe board all the way around? You can see on this site how much wood they've used to make a toe board that goes all the way around this whole structure here. They've got it over there. They've got it down below. So why have that? What's the purpose? And here it is. If a construction worker was working on this level and they kicked a scrap of wood and that scrap of wood slid across the floor and fell down, there's a potential that that wood would hit a worker at the lower level. Or they drop a hammer, or they drop a tape measure and the tape measure rolls that way, or they set some pipes there and the pipes roll off. There's a lot of reasons why you want a toe board on a guardrail system. And so that's why they're necessary, and that's why they have to be 3.5 inches high. They can't be less than that. Last but not least, safety nets. Safety nets are, they almost look like I said, trapeze artist safety nets, but they're designed to withstand the fall of a worker and materials and equipment and all of that stuff. So they're also rated for 5,000 pounds per worker. They have to be rated for that, so that if a worker and a bunch of material fell in there, it would still be able to support that weight. The nets have to be built so that they're no more than 30 feet below where employees would be working. So an employee wouldn't fall 40 or 50 feet into a safety net, because potentially they'll break their neck, potentially they'll break a limb, or potentially that the materials and the person falling all of that distance will gain so much speed that they would break the net. So it has to be within 30 feet of where employees work. That's one little caveat with the safety nets. And they're very expensive. So you're very rarely going to see a safety net set up. It's not impossible, but it's very expensive. So it's not very probable that you'll see safety nets or work around them in construction. Anytime you're on any one of these, you need fall protection. If you're on a walkway or a ramp that's above 6 feet, if you're on open sides and edges, and remember, that's the biggie, open sides and edges in construction. Holes in floors, that's another biggie in construction. If you're forming concrete and you're working on rebar, or you're digging holes in excavations, you're digging these big holes and people can fall in them, you're going to need fall protection. Anytime you're on a roof, anytime you're working around wall openings, or bricklaying or residential construction, that includes commercial construction, you're going to want to make sure that you have fall protection. Here is a video reenactment of someone who is working on a residence. They're applying some siding. They're going to make some mistakes. And it's going to unfortunately cost the guy on the ladder, it's going to cost him his life. But you're going to see a little reenactment of someone working with scaffolding. And this is what scaffolding looks like. It's a structure that's built. It's a modular system where it's stackable, and you can have one scaffolding or two or three, or you can have as many as 10 scaffolding. This is the one exception to the fall 6-foot rule in construction. When you're on scaffolding, you can go up to 10 feet without fall protection. Only applies to scaffolding. Anytime you're climbing a ladder or you're working on a raised floor or anything like that, if you're above 6 feet, you got to wear fall protection. But only in scaffolding, it's 10 feet. But this guy, clearly, this is a second story here, so this is about 20 feet. So this guy is literally standing at 20 feet up in the air, and you'll see what happens.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. Falls are the #1 cause of fatalities in construction. Falls cause 1 of every 3 construction worker deaths. These falls happen in a split second while workers are on roofs, scaffolds, ladders, bridges, and other work surfaces. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows how quickly falls at construction sites can lead to workers' deaths. The video will also show what employers must do so that the work can be done more safely. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and required protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about to see deal with deaths at construction sites and might be disturbing for some people. All scenes are based on true stories. A worker was installing vinyl siding on a 2-story townhome. He was standing on a ladder that was placed on top of a scaffold. A coworker was on the scaffold cutting pieces of siding. The scaffold had no guardrails. The workers were not wearing any fall protection. While standing on the top step of the ladder, the worker putting up siding overreached to one side, and the ladder overturned. He fell nearly 20 feet and landed on the driveway below. He died later that day from injuries caused by the fall. Let's look at the events leading up to this tragic incident and see how it could have been prevented. Originally, the worker installing siding was standing on a ladder that was placed on top of a scaffold. This is a very serious and dangerous OSHA violation. Also, there was no fall protection for these workers. OSHA requires employers to provide workers with fall protection when they're working on scaffolds more than 10 feet above a lower level. Let's look again at the worker installing siding. But now, the worker is standing on a fully decked pump jack scaffold. It has guardrails at the top, middle, and ends. So instead of being at risk from falling while installing siding, this worker is now protected from fall hazards. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
Okay, so there you go. Obviously, this worker is taking his life into his own hands, getting up that high, and well, you know what happened to him. So don't let that be you. All right, so walkways and ramps. You're gonna need fall protection anytime you're on a walkway or a ramp that's up over 6 feet. Remember, 6 feet's that key height, right? Where fall protection is needed, unless you're on scaffolding. And you can see that this ramp is up pretty high. There's some material down there beneath it, so this has got to be 10 feet up in the air or so. And you can see they have a toe board, they have mid rail, top rail, and it looks good. This worker here is working in an unprotected area. He's out on a balcony that's been framed in but not completed. It looks like they're doing drywall. You can see some sheets of drywall over here and some sheets of drywall over here. So they're drywalling the inside of the building. He's coming over here to get some drywall, I'm assuming. And this whole balcony here is unprotected. If he was to back out of that room, let's say, carrying some material and not realize that he was close to that edge, he could fall right off. The material, good chance, would come with him. And that would pose a problem all in itself if you got drywall or wood falling on you at the same time. So you want to make sure anytime you're above 6 feet, again, and you're on an unprotected side, that you have fall protection, some kind of guardrail or something. Same situation here, unprotected sides and edges. You see there's no guardrails or any type of fall protection provided. So he could fall off that edge there if they had a harness that he could wear that would keep him safe. Stay away from these open edges. Another open edge for you. This is a construction site, I think, in a big city. I know it's in a big city, but it could be New York, could be Boston. I don't know, but you can see that there's a cathedral, a church down here. And if I look at that church, I'm going to guess that's probably about 50, 60 feet to the top of that church. And you can see how much higher this elevation is than the top of that church. I mean, you probably have 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 feet above the top of that church is this elevation here. And they're using a 1/4-inch rope to keep workers safe, which is insane that they would think that that was adequate fall protection. If you just kicked a scrap or even shoot a pebble off this height and it fell down on the people below, it could do some serious damage. So you can see that this edge is definitely unprotected. And if you're working on that at this construction site, don't even go close to that. Stay completely away from it until your boss gets that protected for you. You have to be aware of skylights. These are on a lot of buildings. They're plastic. They over time they will become brittle and get weak because they're plastic, and the sun will just wear them out. Who knows what this worker was doing? Maybe he was taking a lunch break. He decided to sit on it. Maybe he was backing up and didn't realize he was that close to a skylight and he fell right through it. But anytime you're on a roof, be aware of holes that exist in the roof, and don't think that these skylights can support your weight, because they can't. There's things you can do to protect people from these skylights. You could throw a guardrail around it that would protect workers, or you could put some kind of strong cover over it, or bars like you have in some houses have bars over their windows. You could put a bar over this, and that would prevent people from falling through, but still allow the natural light to get in the skylight. So if you're on a roof, make sure you're very aware of those. Holes in floors, very important. You can see that they've kind of covered this, but they've done an inadequate job because they've left these big gaps here. And those gaps are areas where material or tools could fall down to people in the level below. You could drop a piece of wood, you could kick something. Who knows what would fall down there, and who knows who would be beneath it. When you cover a hole, you want to make sure that there's no gaps. So you'd use more planks of wood. You'd fasten the wood so that it couldn't be taken or moved. And then you'd want to spray paint on the outside of it, or get out your construction crayon and write on there, "Do not remove," so that contractors don't come along and try and take the wood to use it for their own projects. Whenever you're working in concrete, these guys are doing poured in place concrete. They're building walls. You can see here, they've got one built here. They've got a wall done here, and they're working on this wall here to get it ready to pour. Anytime you're working, you're up 10 feet. I mean, these walls are 10 feet tall. So these guys are up 10 feet in the air. They don't have any fall protection. There's no guardrail. There's no fall arrest system for them. There's nothing. And the only thing we can hope is that they have a safety monitor on site. A safety monitor is that last form of fall protection. So you know that you have the personal fall arrest systems, you have the guardrail system, you have a net, and your last option is to have a safety monitor. And that safety monitor is someone whose only job is to watch the workers. That's their only job. Because in some instances, although this one they could protect these workers with guardrail, but in some instances in construction, it's not possible to provide a net, a personal fall arrest system, or guardrail. And in those instances, you have to have a safety monitor who just walks around and just checks the workers to make sure that they're safe. Their job 100% is just to watch workers. That's all they do. And if workers look like they're getting close to falling or are backing out of something and they're not paying attention, then the safety monitor is there to kind of protect them and be their extra set of eyes. So that's the least desirable method of fall protection. You want to use conventional methods before you resort to using a safety monitor on a construction site. So we got a small little activity here for you. This is what you're going to use your blank sheet of paper, your copy paper. And what I want you to do is pause the video, and I'm going to pull up a fact sheet on on ladders, step ladders. And what I want you to do is just look through the sheet. You can, as I pull up the sheet, I'm going to move the sheet slowly up, and so you can pause the video and read, and then play the video, and I'll move it up, and you can pause it again and read some more. And what I want you to do is create a poster for a construction site for construction workers on the dangers of ladders and falling off of ladders. So your poster must, number one, highlight the risks of falling off of a ladder at a construction site. I want you to show at least 3 safety practices that would prevent falls from ladders, and include at least 3 diagrams or pictures. Remember that you are creating a poster for workers on a construction site. They don't want to sit and read something all day long. They're not interested in reading. They want to be able to look at it and understand it quickly and easily. And remember, some construction workers don't know English, so they need to be able to get the understanding of your poster without having to read a bunch of words. Be creative and show them how to be safe. Let me pull up that document real fast. Okay. Safe use of step ladders. And you can see this document basically spells out for you what is a step ladder. Plan ahead to get the job done safely. Okay. Provide the right step ladder for the job with the proper load capacity. Train workers to use ladders safely. Common step ladder hazards. Safe step ladder use. Safe step ladder use. Do not do these things. And if you want to know where in the standards you can find this information, you got that right here. Okay. So like I said, if you need to stop and pause the video to get this information, feel free to do that. Take the information and then create your poster. Okay, make sure that you protect around excavations. Excavations are basically holes in the ground. You can see that this picture here is a picture of a hole that's been dug right by a street. You got cars driving by. If there's cars, you know there's pedestrians, bike riders, people taking jogs and runs in the morning or whatever would be running by this. Little kids, they're always curious, wanting to look in holes and things like that. So some kind of fall protection would be required here, not just the flags. That doesn't really constitute fall protection. You want to do something that like a guardrail system that would prevent workers from falling into the hole. Even if they bumped into it, they wouldn't fall into it. 6 feet or 6 feet deep or deeper, you'll have to guardrail around it. Anytime you work on a roof, you should have a fall arrest system or some kind of safety, fall safety protection. Most typical is going to be a fall arrest system when you're doing roof work, but just remember that 6 foot rule. Anytime you're working around wall openings, you can see this one here is probably up 30 feet, maybe 20 to 30 feet. And they've got 2x4s laying on the ground that they could easily, throw onto these trimmer studs. And that would prevent a worker from walking right off, right out of there and falling. And you wouldn't think it's possible, but you're so busy on a construction site doing things that you might actually fall out that side there if you're not paying attention. So throw up 3 2x4s, probably cost you less than $5, and you're keeping your worker safe. Good work practices. Make sure that you perform your work at the ground level if possible. Do as much of your stuff on the ground. Build your chimneys or your soffits or whatever you're putting up. Build them all on the ground and then bring them up and install them. It's much safer to do it that way. Tether or restrain your workers so they can't reach the edge. That's with a full body harness. Use safety monitors. Again, this is the less desirable of the systems, but it's better than nothing. And whenever possible, use conventional fall protection means, guardrails, fall arrest systems, netting if necessary. Make sure you're trained. Your employer is responsible for training you on fall protection. They have to teach you how to recognize the hazards on a construction site, how to minimize those hazards. They need to make sure that they train you on fall hazards, fall protection systems, and the use of fall devices. Here's another video demonstrating the dangers of falls on a job site.
Residential home construction. It's all about time, or not enough of it, and money, making every penny count. But maybe it's time to start thinking about something else.
So if we get all this done by Friday,
we're good. Yeah. If we get the delivery, we're good.
Okay. So, and then next week we can work our way into up at the bathroom.
You guys gonna read those plans all day, or aren't the trusses coming in tomorrow?
Yeah. Where are you going?
Somebody's got to lay them out.
Yeah, well, not you. You don't finish up the framing, all right?
Whatever.
Which is where we got to get.
Yeah.
Arnie's been building houses for years. I mean, he was a pro. He knew what he was doing. He's always safe. Guys are always yelling up to the roof, pass me this, pass me that. I mean, that happens every day on a site.
Hey, Ryan, pass me a pencil.
It was nothing out of the ordinary today.
Hey, Arnie! Ricks doesn't know if they can supply tomorrow.
What?
I said Ricks doesn't know if they can
Arnie,
supply
pencil.
till tomorrow.
Arnie and I have been building houses together for 10 years. What am I going to do now?
Arnie never let me walk the top plate. He said I didn't have enough experience. But he'd been doing it for years, you know?
Never walk the top plate. Build a platform or buy one. You're a pro. There's always time to do it right.
All right. Pretty self-explanatory. Summary: if you can fall more than 6 feet, you must be protected. Use fall protection when you're walking on open sides and edges and holes. Those two are very important. Concrete forms, rebar, roofs, wall openings, any kind of residential, commercial construction have fall protection. Protective measures include guardrails, safety nets, personal fall arrest systems, and worst case scenario safety monitor. And that'll do it. You're done with your presentation, with the present fall protection presentation. Make sure that you give your instructor the questions, the 10 questions that you answered, and your poster. And the instructor will give you a quiz. There's 10 questions on the quiz. You have to at least get 8 correct in order to be signed off for this part of your OSHA training. Congratulations, and keep working. You're almost there. Keep it up.